She's more resilient and superior for you." Those devastating words echoed through my mind like a death knell as I stood motionless outside the grand ballroom doors during my uncle's retirement celebration. My boyfriend of 3 years, James, had left to fetch us champagne, but his prolonged absence prompted me to search for him. Now, I wished I'd never moved from my spot. Sophie is sweet, but let's be honest, my Victoria has always been the achiever, the one with genuine promise. My mother's casual tone sliced through me as if discussing nothing more significant than the weather forecast. You deserve someone who propels you forward in life, not someone holding you back. I peered through the ornate double doors, watching James's expression shift from uncomfortable surprise to thoughtful consideration. He didn't defend me, didn't laugh it off, just stood there clutching our forgotten drinks, listening intently. "I've always sensed you two had stronger chemistry anyway," my mother continued, patting his arm with maternal affection that made my stomach twist painfully. "Victoria has been observing you for years, just waiting for her opportunity." "I'm not sure, Mrs. Bennet," James hesitated, his indecision already feeling like betrayal. "Sophie and I have been together for quite some time." "And what do you have to show for it?" She raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. "Victoria just made senior associate at her investment firm." "What's Sophie accomplishing with that photography degree?" "Taking pictures of weddings nobody remembers and landscapes nobody purchases." The cruel assessment of my struggling photography career stung deeply, but it was James's thoughtful nod that truly shattered me. I retreated silently, somehow maintaining composure throughout the remainder of the celebration while a hurricane of emotions raged within. I should have confronted them immediately, should have ended everything that evening. Instead, I smiled and pretended I hadn't heard a single word. That was my first devastating mistake. The changes materialized gradually. James began mentioning Victoria in everyday conversation, how impressive her recent portfolio acquisition was, how her CrossFit regimen was really transforming her physique. Each comment felt like a tiny needle prick, painful, but not sufficient to acknowledge openly. Then came the canceled dinner plans, the late evenings at the office, his sudden interest in financial documentaries that Victoria had suggested. Once I discovered messages between them discussing brunch arrangements never mentioned to me, I confronted him. James dismissed it casually. "She's your sister, Sophie. It would be awkward if we weren't friendly." His reasonable tone made me question my own sanity. Was I being irrational? Oversensitive? Family dinners became exercises in torture, watching their interactions with wounded eyes while they exchanged private smiles across elegant dining tables. My closest friend Lily noticed the shift before I would admit it to myself. "Something's different with him," she observed after James departed another dinner early, claiming deadline pressure. "He doesn't look at you with the same adoration anymore." "We're just experiencing a challenging phase," I insisted, ignoring the painful truth expanding in my chest. "Everyone does." The moment of undeniable truth arrived 3 months after that ballroom conversation. I had dropped by James's condominium unannounced, hoping to surprise him with symphony tickets for a composer he admired. I still possessed a key. We'd been discussing cohabitation before everything changed. The condo was quiet when I entered, but a trail of discarded clothing led toward the bedroom. My sister's designer blouse lay crumpled on the hallway floor. The bedroom door wasn't completely closed. The sounds emanating from within confirmed what I already knew before I pushed it open. Victoria's long auburn hair cascaded across James's chest as they lay entangled in his Egyptian cotton sheets, completely oblivious to my presence until I dropped the symphony tickets. They scattered across the polished hardwood like confetti for a celebration I wasn't welcome to attend. "Sophie." James scrambled to cover himself while Victoria simply stared, more annoyed than ashamed at the interruption. "Don't." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Don't claim it isn't what it appears." "I'm not a fool." Victoria sat up slowly, making no attempt to cover herself. "You were going to discover it eventually. Perhaps this is for the best." Their calm acceptance wounded me more profoundly than any hysterical apology could have. This wasn't a momentary weakness, this was the culmination of a deliberate scheme. How long? I asked, though the answer hardly mattered. 2 months officially, James admitted, unable to meet my gaze. But we've been communicating for longer since Mom had her little discussion with you, I finished for him. Their surprised expressions confirmed I'd known more than they realized. I departed without screaming or throwing objects, though I desperately wanted to. The rage would emerge later that night. I simply felt hollow, scraped raw from within. When I confronted my mother the following day, her lack of remorse delivered the final devastation. We stood in her immaculate kitchen, the same room where she'd planted the seeds of my relationship's destruction. Don't be so melodramatic, Sophie. Relationships dissolve constantly, she remarked, arranging exotic flowers as if we were discussing nothing more consequential than the weekend forecast. Victoria and James complement each other better. Surely you recognize that. Why would you orchestrate this? My voice cracked. Your own daughter? She sighed, finally looking up from her floral arrangement. Because Victoria has always exerted more effort, aimed higher. She deserves a partner who matches her ambition. She touched my cheek with cool fingers. You were always the sensitive one, the dreamer. You'll discover someone better suited to your temperament. In that moment, I understood that my mother had never truly seen me, had never valued what defined me. In her eyes, I would forever be the lesser daughter, the disappointment who chose photography over finance, passion over pragmatism. You're wrong about me, I whispered. You always have been. I spent that night packing everything I could fit into my car. My small apartment contained mostly second-hand furniture, nothing I couldn't abandon. Lily helped, offering her guest room until I determined my next steps, but I had already decided. I needed more than a new apartment. I needed a new city, a fresh beginning where every street corner didn't hold memories of James or reminders of my sister's treachery. Are you certain about this? Lily asked as I loaded the final box. Escaping won't resolve anything. I'm not escaping, I corrected her, feeling a strange serenity settle over me. I'm advancing forward. The next morning, I left a brief note for my mother, sister, and James. It contained no forgiveness or bitter accusations, just 3 words: watch me flourish. With my photography portfolio, savings that would last 2 months if I was frugal, and a determination born from heartbreak, I pointed my car toward Denver, a city where nobody knew my name or the story of how easily I'd been replaced. Denver welcomed me with brilliant sunshine. How appropriate, I thought as my windows captured the golden rays illuminating the mountain backdrop. My GPS directed me to a motel on the city's outskirts, the only accommodation my dwindling funds could support while I searched for something permanent. The motel room smelled faintly of pine cleaner and synthetic air freshener. I sat on the edge of the bed surrounded by my hastily packed belongings and allowed myself 5 minutes to weep, just 5 minutes of vulnerability before the real work commenced. When my alarm chimed, I wiped my face, opened my laptop, and began hunting for apartments and employment with equal urgency. 3 days and 12 apartment viewings later, I signed a lease for a studio in Lodo, a neighborhood with distinctive character, my realtor had explained optimistically. What she meant was that the building was historic, the elevator frequently malfunctioning, and my neighbors an eclectic collection of students, artists, and service industry workers. The rent consumed nearly 2/3 of my remaining savings, starting the invisible countdown clock on my Denver experiment. You have 30 days, I told my reflection as I attached job listings to my refrigerator with magnets shaped like tiny mountains, the only decorative element in my sparse new home. Secure employment or admit defeat. 28 days later, after a series of rejections and unanswered applications, I walked into Alpine Investment Partners for my final scheduled interview. The receptionist directed me to a waiting area where another candidate sat reviewing notes, her designer suit making my carefully pressed department store dress suddenly feel woefully inadequate. Ms. Bennett, a woman with a sleek pixie cut and frameless glasses, appeared. "I'm Nancy from Human Resources. I'm afraid there's been an adjustment." My heart plummeted as she continued, "The administrative position has been filled internally, but Mr. Harrison wondered if you'd be interested in interviewing for a different role, executive assistant to one of our junior partners." I followed her through a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices, finally arriving at a corner workspace where a man sat surrounded by stacks of reports and takeout containers. He looked up, revealing alert eyes and subtle stubble that somehow enhanced rather than detracted from his professional appearance. "Ryan Davidson," he introduced himself, standing to shake my hand. "Sorry about the chaos. Quarterly reports are due, and my previous assistant resigned without notice." "Sophie Bennett," I replied, surprised by his firm handshake and direct gaze. "I'm adaptable regarding job descriptions as long as they include a paycheck." A smile flickered across his face. "Honest. I appreciate that." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Tell me why a photography major from Philadelphia wants to work at a Denver investment firm." I could have crafted a diplomatic response about career transitions and financial stability. Instead, I heard myself say, "Because starting over sometimes requires burning the map of your previous life and sketching an entirely new one." For a moment, I thought I'd ruined my chances with my melodramatic answer. Then Ryan nodded slowly. "I understand something about fresh beginnings myself." He pushed aside a stack of folders. "The position pays less than the administrative role you applied for, but offers greater advancement potential. The hours are grueling, the learning curve steep, and I'm told I can be demanding." "I'm not intimidated by hard work or demanding personalities," I assured him, thinking of my mother's perpetual disapproval. "And I absorb information quickly." He hired me on the spot, and I started the following morning. The initial weeks tested every limit I possessed. Ryan worked 16-hour days preparing client portfolios and investment strategies, expecting me to maintain his pace. I brought him coffee that grew cold while he analyzed market trends, ordered lunches he forgot to eat, and transformed chaos into manageable systems while absorbing investment terminology through osmosis. "Why are you still here?" he asked one night at 11. Glancing up to find me reorganizing his client files by risk profile rather than alphabetically. "Because the work remains unfinished," I answered simply. Our early interactions were strictly professional, but punctuated by awkward moments like when he accidentally sent me a text meant for his brother complaining about a terrible date, or when I spilled coffee across important documents and nearly wept from stress and embarrassment. "It's just paper," he said, helping me blot the mess. "The data is backed up. Breathe, Sophie." Lunch breaks became our unintentional bonding time. Ryan insisted I leave the office, dragging me to food trucks or hole-in-the-wall restaurants where we discussed everything except work, from his passion for vintage motorcycles to my abandoned photography. I kept my past vague, but he never pressed for details I wasn't prepared to share. "You're an enigma, Bennett," he commented once over authentic Mexican tacos. "Most people love discussing themselves." "Most people have narratives worth sharing," I deflected. As months passed, our professional rhythm improved while our personal rapport deepened. Ryan began seeking my input on client presentations. I started anticipating his needs before he expressed them. Late nights evolved from stressed silence to companionable collaboration, occasionally punctuated by surprisingly personal conversations. My father expected me to take over his construction empire, Ryan confided during a particularly late evening. "He considers finance, gambling with other people's resources. We haven't spoken in 2 years. My mother always favored my sister," I offered in return my first mention of family. "Nothing I accomplished was ever quite sufficient." He didn't offer platitudes or judgments, just understanding silence that felt more healing than any words could have provided. 6 months into my Denver reinvention, Ryan asked me to join him for dinner at an actual restaurant instead of eating takeout at our desks. I assumed it was to celebrate securing a major client. Instead, over dessert, he pushed a business plan across the table. "I've been developing this for 3 years," he explained as I skimmed the document. "A boutique investment firm focused on sustainable businesses and first-generation entrepreneurs' clients overlooked by traditional institutions." I looked up, confused. "It's impressive, but why show me?" "Because I'm leaving Alpine next month to launch it," he leaned forward, eyes intense, "and I want you to accompany me not as my assistant but as operations manager. You understand systems, people, and how to make things function in ways I never could." "That's absurd," I managed, pulse quickening. "I barely comprehend the investment world." "You understand more than you realize," he countered. "And you possess something more valuable: integrity and intuition. The technical aspects can be learned." "It would be risky," I said cautiously, though something inside me had already begun to whisper yes. "Extremely," he agreed with unexpected candor. "We might fail spectacularly, but I'd rather fail building something meaningful than succeed making wealthy people marginally wealthier." I studied his face, searching for signs of the impulsiveness or hollow ambition I'd witnessed in others. Instead, I found steady determination and genuine belief in his vision and, surprisingly, in me. "When do we begin?" I heard myself ask, feeling for the first time since leaving Philadelphia that I was moving toward something, not just away. Our transition from colleagues to business partners happened seamlessly, but the shift from friends to something more caught us both by surprise. It began with late nights reviewing business plans that evolved into conversations about hopes and aspirations, then dinners that continued well past discussing work. 6 months into our new venture, Ryan kissed me for the first time outside our office building as snow fell softly around us. Neither of us mentioned it the next day, both afraid to complicate our precarious business relationship. But when it happened again a week later, we could no longer pretend it was impulsive. "This could destroy everything we've built," I warned him one evening. "Or it could become the foundation for something even greater," he countered, always the optimist to my cautious realist. Our courtship was unconventional business meetings that transformed into dates, market research trips that became weekend getaways. We kept it private from clients and investors, determined to be taken seriously in a field where women were often viewed as accessories rather than equals. But within a year, Ryan proposed during an ordinary moment, both of us in comfortable clothes reviewing quarterly projections on my living room floor. "Marry me," he said suddenly, looking up from a spreadsheet. "Be my partner in everything." No ring, no rehearsed speech, just genuine certainty that caught me off guard. "People will say it's premature," I hesitated, though my heart had already responded. "Let them talk. I've never been more certain about anything." We married 3 months later at the courthouse, with only Lily, who'd flown in from Philadelphia, and Ryan's brother Michael as witnesses. I wore a simple ivory dress, Ryan a charcoal suit, no elaborate vows, just straightforward promises spoken with unmistakable conviction. "I choose you as my partner in all things," Ryan said, holding my hands tightly. "I promise that our partnership will always come first, before work, before success, before everything." The words healed something within me that had been fractured by betrayal. This wasn't a man seeking someone stronger or better. He saw me exactly as I was and chose me deliberately. Our reception was dinner at our favorite Mexican restaurant, the one where we'd shared countless lunches. The owner, Mrs. Hernandez, insisted on decorating our table with flowers and serving champagne she'd reserved for special occasions. "To partnerships that elevate us," Ryan toasted. Reality quickly replaced romance as we confronted the challenges of a startup business. Our fledgling company, Davidson Capital Partners, operated from our one-bedroom apartment to minimize overhead expenses. The dining table became our conference room, the living room transformed into an improvised office with filing cabinets disguised as end tables. We scheduled client meetings at cafes or hotel lobbies, carefully crafting the illusion of established success we hadn't yet achieved. I accepted a part-time position at a photography gallery to supplement our income while Ryan pursued potential clients. Our savings diminished as months passed without the breakthrough we desperately needed. Some nights I'd discover Ryan still awake at 3 in the morning, recalculating projections or revising proposals. We should consider accepting more traditional clients, I suggested delicately after our 6th month of barely covering expenses. Just until we're established. If we compromise now, we'll never return to our original vision, he argued, the stubborn determination in his voice both admirable and alarming. Our first genuine argument as a married couple erupted over finances. Ryan wanted to invest our emergency fund into expanding the business. I insisted we needed security. The disagreement ended with slammed doors and hurt feelings, but also a compromise, half for growth, half for security. It became our pattern, his ambition balanced by my pragmatism, creating equilibrium neither of us could achieve individually. 8 months into our marriage, opportunity finally emerged. A small sustainable energy company needed investors who understood their mission beyond profit margins. Ryan spent weeks developing a presentation that explained not just returns on investment, but environmental impact and community benefits. I stayed awake all night designing informational packets that showcased both professionalism and personality. The client selected us over established firms, bringing 3 other eco-conscious businesses with them. Finally, we had momentum. We need to celebrate, Ryan insisted, though I was reluctant to spend money. He surprised me by recreating our first date takeout containers from that same Mexican restaurant, spreadsheets pushed aside to make room for enchiladas and tacos on our dining table. To our first major client, he toasted with grocery store wine and coffee mugs. And to my brilliant wife who never stopped believing, even when I almost did. The business grew steadily after that initial breakthrough. Our apartment became increasingly cramped with file boxes and office equipment. Interns worked from our sofa. Conference calls happened in our bedroom with the door closed. The arrangement became unsustainable the day a potential investor arrived early for a meeting while I was stepping out of the shower. We need proper office space, Ryan conceded that evening, and possibly a home where I don't find paper clips in the cereal box. With cautious optimism, we signed a lease on a small office space downtown and relocated to a slightly larger apartment, one with a spare bedroom that wouldn't double as storage for business documents. The separation between work and home brought welcome balance to our relationship. 3 years of relentless work followed. Ryan developed a reputation for integrity and innovation in sustainable investment. Our client list expanded beyond Denver to neighboring states. I built systems and teams that transformed Ryan's vision into operational reality. We complemented each other perfectly. His charisma and strategic thinking matched with my attention to detail and organizational skills. Our biggest milestone arrived unexpectedly. A major investment group approached Ryan about acquiring Davidson Capital Partners. Their offer was generous, but included a condition: Ryan would need to remain as CEO of the newly expanded Sustainable Investment Division with complete decision-making authority over ethical investments. I never imagined directing something this substantial, he admitted the night after signing the contracts. We stood in the kitchen of our new house, a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom in a neighborhood we'd only dreamed about when we started. They didn't acquire just the company, I reminded him, straightening his tie. They acquired your vision, your integrity. The transition wasn't seamless. Ryan worked longer hours establishing the new division, while I adjusted to my role as Chief Operations Officer. But watching him command boardrooms with the same passion he'd once displayed in our tiny apartment filled me with pride that eclipsed all sacrifices. "We achieved it," he whispered during the champagne toast at the official announcement of his appointment. Together. And as I watched him shake hands with executives who now reported to him, I reflected on how far we'd journeyed from that sun-drenched day I'd arrived in Denver, heartbroken and alone. Life had stripped everything from me, only to replace it with something I never could have imagined. 5 years into Ryan's role as CEO, I had firmly established myself as more than just the boss's wife. My operational systems had become the backbone of the company's expansion into 3 new markets, and executives regularly sought my input on organizational decisions. We had found our rhythm, Ryan the visionary, me the architect who constructed the framework supporting his dreams. Our personal life had settled into comfortable routines as well: Sunday mornings reading the newspaper over coffee, monthly dinner parties with our small circle of friends, and occasional weekend trips to Wyoming where Ryan was restoring a vintage motorcycle. We hadn't started a family yet, both focused on nurturing our growing company, but the topic had begun to surface in late-night conversations. I rarely thought about Philadelphia anymore. Lily visited occasionally, bringing carefully filtered updates about mutual friends, but never mentioning my family. I'd made peace with that chapter of my life being firmly closed, or so I believed, until a particular Tuesday morning. "You might want to review this," Ryan said, sliding a financial magazine across the breakfast table. The small headline in the corner read, "Bennett Legal Faces Bankruptcy After Failed Expansion." My sister's law firm, the one she'd established with my ex-boyfriend after he left his previous position to join her practice. "I didn't realize you still monitored news from Philadelphia," I said, trying to sound casual while my heart pounded. "I don't, but Pinnacle Investment Group is on our acquisition shortlist, and your ex works there now. Their legal department outsources to Bennett Legal." Ryan watched me carefully. "I wanted you to hear it from me before the office started discussing it." The magazine article detailed Victoria's failed attempt to expand her firm nationally, resulting in mounting debt and client exodus. James had apparently joined Pinnacle's compliance team after their joint venture collapsed, accepting a significant pay cut. The irony wasn't lost on me. The stronger match my mother had engineered now struggling while I sat in my beautiful kitchen beside a successful husband. "Does it affect your acquisition plans?" I asked pragmatically. "That depends entirely on you," Ryan replied. "Pinnacle's sustainable energy portfolio aligns perfectly with our growth strategy, but I'll walk away if it causes you discomfort." His willingness to sacrifice a smart business decision for my emotional well-being exemplified why I'd fallen in love with him. "Don't be ridiculous," I said, squeezing his hand. "It's purely business." 2 weeks later, the acquisition was finalized. Pinnacle would maintain its brand identity while operating under our corporate umbrella, with James remaining in his compliance role, technically now our employee, though several management layers would separate us. "We should host a gala," Ryan suggested one evening as we reviewed the quarterly results. "Celebrate the acquisition, showcase our expanded sustainable portfolio to investors, and introduce the Pinnacle team to our corporate culture." The suggestion wasn't unusual. We hosted similar events annually, typically at Denver's Museum of Nature and Science, where the sustainability theme resonated with our company values. What caught me off guard was Ryan's next comment. "I think we should invite James Bennett and the key players from Philadelphia, including any affiliated legal representatives. Show them our corporate values extend beyond Denver." My teacup froze halfway to my lips. "You want to invite my sister and ex-boyfriend to our corporate gala?" Ryan set down his papers. "Is that what this is about?" "I had no idea the Bennett in the legal documents. I never connected it to your sister." His genuine surprise made me realize I'd never shared my complete family history with him, only vague references to a difficult mother and a favored sister. Ryan knew I'd left Philadelphia after a betrayal, but didn't know the specifics. I'd compartmentalized so effectively that I'd forgotten he couldn't see the connections I found glaringly obvious. That night, I finally told him everything: my mother's manipulation, James's betrayal, Victoria's callousness. I expected sympathy, perhaps protective anger on my behalf. What I didn't anticipate was Ryan's thoughtful silence, followed by an unexpected perspective. "Perhaps it's time they witnessed who've become," he said finally. "Not for revenge, but for closure. You've constructed an extraordinary life, so feel life authentic to who you are, not what anyone else wanted you to be." His words unlocked something within me, a desire not for retribution, but for recognition, not to wound them as they'd wounded me, but to stand confidently before them as the woman I'd become despite their dismissal of my worth. "We'll invite them," I decided. "All of them, James, Victoria, even my mother." The subsequent weeks became a whirlwind of gala preparations alongside a growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. I channeled my nervous energy into ensuring every detail was perfect, from the sustainable seafood menu to the carbon-neutral transportation for guests. Our event coordinator commented that I'd never been so involved in planning before. As I reviewed the finalized guest list, seeing their names in black and white triggered a wave of emotions I thought I'd processed years ago. What would they think seeing me now? Would my mother still view me as the lesser daughter? Would James regret his choice? The questions circled relentlessly despite my attempts to dismiss them. "Having second thoughts?" Ryan asked, finding me staring at the invitation mock-ups late one night. "Not about inviting them," I clarified. "Just wondering if I'm doing this for the right reasons. Am I still seeking their approval after all these years?" Ryan sat beside me, taking my hands in his. "Only you can answer that, but from my perspective, you stopped needing anyone's approval the day you drove into Denver with nothing but determination and talent." He kissed my forehead. "Whatever your reasons, I'll stand beside you." His steady confidence strengthened mine. The next morning, I approved the final invitation list without hesitation. The RSVPs arrived gradually: business associates, investors, Pinnacle employees. Then came the responses from Philadelphia. James would attend as Pinnacle's compliance officer. Victoria would accompany him as his wife, and most surprisingly, my mother accepted with a brief note indicating she looked forward to reconnecting after all these years. The formal invitations were mailed 3 weeks before the event, elegant cards featuring recycled paper and soy-based ink that reflected our company's values. For my family's invitations, I included a personal note: "Looking forward to showing you the life I've built. Sophie Davidson." As the gala approached, my wardrobe became an unexpected source of anxiety. The perfect dress became symbolic. It needed to project confidence without obvious attempt to impress. After countless shopping trips, I found a sophisticated sapphire gown that complemented my eyes and projected elegant authority. "Ready to confront your past?" Ryan asked the night before the gala, finding me rehearsing imaginary conversations before our bedroom mirror. "Ready to showcase my present," I corrected, suddenly certain of my purpose. This wasn't about proving my worth to people who had underestimated me. It was about honoring the journey that had led me to a life more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined when I fled Philadelphia. The Museum of Nature and Science transformed beautifully for our gala, with sustainable lighting casting a warm glow across the grand hall. Ryan and I arrived early to review final arrangements: the organic floral centerpieces, the locally sourced menu, the jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. Everything perfect, everything a reflection of the values that had built our success. "Nervous?" Ryan asked, adjusting his bow tie as we watched staff add finishing touches. "Oddly, no," I realized with surprise. The anxiety that had plagued me for weeks had dissolved, replaced by calm certainty. This is our world, they're just visiting it. As guests began arriving, Ryan and I stationed ourselves near the entrance, greeting investors and colleagues with practiced ease. I wore my sapphire gown with a simple diamond pendant Ryan had given me on our 5th anniversary. My hair, once long like Victoria's, now fell in a sophisticated bob that framed my face. I felt powerful, authentic, completely myself. I spotted them immediately, my mother entering first in a navy dress that screamed old money Philadelphia, followed by Victoria and James. They paused just inside the doorway, taking in the elegant surroundings and clearly searching for familiar faces in a sea of strangers. For a moment, I considered approaching them, but something held me back. Let them find me, I decided. Let them see me in my element first. Their circuit around the room eventually brought them to where Ryan and I stood chatting with the governor about green energy initiatives. My mother noticed me first, her practiced social smile freezing momentarily before recovering. Victoria's eyes widened in genuine shock. James simply stared, looking between Ryan and me with dawning recognition. Sophie, my mother, recovered first, embracing me with theatrical affection. You look absolutely stunning. Mother, I responded evenly, accepting her air kiss. I'm pleased you could attend. I turned to include Ryan. This is my husband, Ryan Davidson, CEO. Ryan Davidson, Victoria clarified, extending her hand, always researching, always calculating advantages. Some things never changed. Your reputation precedes you. I've followed your company's expansion with interest. All due respect, Mrs. Bennett, but our success has been a partnership from day one, Ryan replied smoothly, his hand finding the small of my back. Sophie's operational genius made my vision possible. The surprise in their eyes was subtle but unmistakable. This wasn't the narrative they had expected, the heartbroken girl finding a successful man to rescue her. This was a partnership of equals. James Bennett, my ex, introduced himself stiffly. Compliance officer at Pinnacle. Yes, we're familiar with your position. Ryan nodded professionally. Welcome to the family of companies. James's expression shifted as understanding dawned. You're Pinnacle's new parent company? Indeed, I confirmed, savoring the moment without malice. The acquisition was finalized last month. Ryan will be making the official announcement during his speech. Their discomfort was palpable as they processed this new reality. The man who had discarded me for someone stronger, now answering to the company I had helped build. The sister who had taken what was mine now standing before me not as the superior sibling, but as the wife of a mid-level employee. If you'll excuse us, Ryan said graciously, we should continue greeting our guests. Please enjoy yourselves. As we moved away, I caught my mother watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, something between calculation and genuine bewilderment. The evening progressed with choreographed precision. Dinner was served, awards presented to key team members, including several I had personally mentored. Throughout it all, I felt their eyes following me, watching as executives sought my opinion, as Ryan referenced my contributions in conversations, as I navigated the room with the confidence of someone exactly where she belonged. Ryan's welcome speech came after dinner. He spoke eloquently about sustainable investment, about building businesses that valued more than just profit margins. Then came the announcement about Pinnacle's acquisition, with James uncomfortably spotlighted as Ryan welcomed him and his colleagues into our corporate structure. The power dynamic couldn't have been clearer if we'd designed it intentionally. My mother found me at the dessert table afterward, champagne glass in hand. I always knew you would excel, she stated, as though rewriting history. You possessed such potential. Did you? I asked mildly. I recalled different assessments. She waved dismissively. A mother pushes her children to achieve their best. Victoria needed confidence, you needed motivation. What I needed was support, I corrected gently. What I discovered was strength on my own terms. Well, she sipped her champagne. I suppose I should thank this Ryan for recognizing what I overlooked. Ryan saw me clearly, I agreed, but he didn't create my success, Mother. We built it together because we value each other as equals. That's the fundamental difference. Her practiced smile faltered. Victoria and James are experiencing difficulties, she confided, changing tactics. Perhaps you could offer a favorable recommendation. Family should support family. There it was, the true purpose behind her pleasant facade. Not reconciliation, but advantage. Some things truly never changed. Their performance will determine their future with the company, I replied evenly, just as mine did. I spotted Victoria approaching determinedly, James trailing behind her. "Your husband is impressive," my sister acknowledged reluctantly. "The way he commands attention. You've secured a good position for yourself." The backhanded compliment hung in the air, the implication that my success merely reflected my husband's, not a partnership we'd built together. "We've achieved success together," I corrected. "That's how genuine partnerships function, something worth considering in your own arrangements." Victoria's expression hardened at the gentle rebuke. James looked away uncomfortably, unable to meet my eyes. The dynamic between them seemed strained, brittle in a way that triggered not satisfaction, but an unexpected pang of compassion. They had obtained what they thought they wanted, only to discover it wasn't the prize they'd imagined. "I should circulate," I excused myself. "Enjoy the remainder of the evening." Hours later, after the last guest departed and we returned home, exhausted but satisfied, Ryan and I sat in our kitchen sharing leftover dessert straight from the container. "How do you feel?" he asked, studying my face in the soft kitchen light. "Lighter," I realized. "Like I've set down something heavy I didn't know I was still carrying." He nodded thoughtfully. "They seem smaller somehow, not at all how I imagined from your stories." "They are smaller," I mused. "Or maybe I'm larger, not in status or success, but in understanding what genuinely matters." "Which is?" Ryan prompted. "Constructing something authentic." I reached for his hand across the counter. "Something true to yourself, with someone who recognizes your value without needing to diminish others." "So not revenge after all." His eyes crinkled with understanding. "The strangest thing happened," I confessed, standing there watching them, seeing how unhappy they are despite getting exactly what they schemed for. I didn't feel triumph. I felt grateful. Grateful. His eyebrows raised slightly. "If they hadn't betrayed me, I might never have left, never discovered Denver, never met you, never uncovered what I'm capable of building." I squeezed his hand. "Their cruelty inadvertently gifted me my freedom, though they never intended to." Ryan smiled, pulling me into an embrace. "That might be the most powerful form of redemption, not making others pay for hurting you, but recognizing that their actions launched you towards something infinitely better." As we climbed the stairs to bed, exhausted but content, I realized the night had given me something I hadn't known I needed, not the satisfaction of showing them what they'd lost, but the peace of finally, completely letting them go.